Thank you very much for your comments, but more importantly, thank you very much for your service. I just really want to first underline the point you made about PRC China and their debt diplomacy and debt traps, I would say, to other countries. It points out how we have to strengthen our own tools in order to deal with that issues, but also we need to do a better job in public relations and explaining the difference between partnerships with the United States and partnerships with the People's Republic of China. Because, as you point out, we leverage so that the country can control its fate. The PRC leverages so that China can control their fate. And that point, I think, needs to be underscored a lot more than we have in the past. I just point that out. We are here to talk about the FY25 budget, but we have to first talk about the FY24 budget. You made reference to the importance of the supplemental appropriation bill that passed the United States Senate that's now in the House of Representatives. We've had a lot of discussions in the press and publicly about the importance to Ukraine and their military defense against Putin's aggression. We've had conversations here about the aid in the Middle East to Israel in regards to Hamas's attack against Israel. We've had discussions here about the importance in the Indo-Pacific area against PRC's aggression, particularly as it relates to Taiwan. We need to concentrate today on the importance in regards to our humanitarian needs and your ability to carry out your mission for the remainder of this year and into next fiscal year. So I want to concentrate in three areas. We have a humanitarian crisis in Sudan. I mentioned that. Senator Booker was just recently in the country and told many of us about just the dire needs that are there. We see every day the challenges in Gaza. We know we have to do more on the humanitarian front, and that requires U.S. leadership and U.S. dollars. And we know that in Ukraine we have a humanitarian crisis because of the war. So tell us how important it is to pass the funds that are in the supplemental. We passed the FY24 budget. Is that enough to deal with these concerns, or do you need the supplemental, and how critically important is the supplemental to deal with those incredibly challenging crises that we see every day?
Thank you. I know we don't have a lot of time, but this is such an important question. So let me first start by saying that the word supplemental for the countries and the crises that you mentioned is in many ways a misnomer. Why is that? Because a lot of the resources, and Senator Risch alluded to some of this, maybe in a different way, but a lot of the resources that we had previously channeled through the regular budget were moved in previous years to the supplemental. So if the National Security Supplemental were not to pass, or were not to pass at the current level that was sent over by the Senate, you would basically be seeing, in terms of humanitarian needs, including in Gaza, Sudan, and Ukraine, the three places you mentioned, you would be seeing in this year an increase of roughly 40% in humanitarian need and a decrease roughly of between 35 and 40% of humanitarian funding. So, and that is because, again, we were generously funded in the past. We were able to lead in response to crises as the numbers of people displaced and in dire need of food to survive increased because Congress stepped up, but stepped up also by moving resources that had been in the base to the supplemental. On Ukraine, without the supplemental, we actually have no resources to do the kind of energy, agriculture, anti-corruption work, the core development work that everybody up here, I think, supports us doing, but many assume that we have resources to do under the regular budget. So this just gets to sort of how the budget was organized, but it also gets, of course, to the indispensability of these needs. So on Sudan, on Gaza, on Ukraine, as Putin pulverizes communities, as he again tries to weaponize winter and take out energy infrastructure with really an unprecedented spate of attacks just in recent weeks, it's just heartbreaking that resources that Ukrainians need on the ground to be able to repair that energy infrastructure, for us to procure far enough in advance also so we can look ahead to next winter, because we know he's going to pursue the same approach if the war is not over by then, that those resources would be so close to passage in principle, and yet where a vote can't even be taken that is on the package that reflects a bipartisan majority here in the Senate the human consequences can't be overstated.
I'll just make one last point on this. We all know we need to do more in all three of the areas that I mentioned. We see that every day. More has to be done. The United States has been the leader in providing the resources for these humanitarian responses. If the United States does not provide the expected leadership in providing resources, what happens with the global community's response to these humanitarian needs?
Well, as you know, in Ukraine, for every dollar that the U.S. has provided, other donors have provided $2. As we have been stalled on our ability to provide direct budget support to the government of Ukraine, as Putin seeks to destroy its economy and destroy its ability to finance health, education, and other things, we have asked our partners to front load their funding and to step up. They have done so with a calculated view on the basis of recent history over the last 2 years that America will show up, that we can't abandon freedom and we can't leave Ukraine to be the victim of aggression at a time like this. There's absolutely no guarantee that we would be able to continue to leverage our leadership if we are not exercising it sufficiently. And that is what is at stake here. And Ukraine is just one example.
Thank you.